What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. This is Ryan Thomas, the host, the one and only host of the Thomas Take. Wanted to hop on here a little bit earlier, an hour late, but as they say, better late than never. Today, a good day to get on the mic and give my take on the event that was Bellator NYC. Bellator MMA invaded Madison Square Garden in New York City last night. The landmark event for Bellator MMA, an event that featured a lot of big names in the history of mixed martial arts: Fedor Emelianenko, Chael Sonnen, Wanderlei Silva, Ryan Bader, Phil Davis. The card was fairly stacked with three title fights: Michael Chandler versus Brent Primus. You had Lorenz Larkin taking on Douglas Lima for the welterweight title. And then you had Michael Chandler versus Brent Primus, and then you had Phil Davis versus Ryan Bader 2. And the Phil Davis-Ryan Bader 2 fight was on Spike, and we saw a new champion be crowned as Ryan Bader dethroned Phil Davis via split decision in a fight that was very, very close. And this was basically a true sequel to the first bout where Davis and Bader fought in the UFC back in 2015 in Sweden around 4 a.m. Eastern time. So that was then. This is now, but the fights were very similar, almost creepy how similar they were from fight 1 to fight 2. Virtually no stone was left unturned, where Bader was barely getting by against Phil Davis, but he was somehow able to pull out the win on the 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. So congrats to the new Bellator light heavyweight champion. On to the next title fight. You had Lorenz Larkin, a longtime Strikeforce fighter, UFC fighter, in his debut, and he was given a title shot in the welterweight division in Bellator. And I expected more from Larkin. I expected Larkin to come in at angles, use his speed, use his power, really use his combinations, which he is known to have from punching, turning a punch into a kick combo. And that was something that he kind of was his real, what word am I looking for? His credo, so to speak. Turning a punch combination, a right hook into a left head kick or a left body kick. And he only threw one punch at a time. So you don't win fights that way unless you are, Rampage Jackson or somebody that is a big dude. And Lorenz Larkin is not. He's a welterweight. And Douglas Lima is as tough as they come in terms of his chin and his speed and his striking ability. Douglas Lima retains his title in a lackluster fight, a fight that was a real chess match. But to say the least, I was very excited to watch that fight, and it was exciting. Every fight on this card was exciting. There wasn't one fight that wasn't exciting in the least. Each one had its own excitement factor. There were some freak accidents that happened, and that's a perfect segue to the Michael Chandler-Brent Primus fight, where Michael Chandler rolled his ankle in the first round. Mike Chandler really tried to battle through, but he just could not. And the real just debacle of the entire situation of that fight was not necessarily that Michael Chandler rolled his ankle, but the doctor pulled the stool out from under his butt, and Michael Chandler stood up. The doctor pulled the stool, and Chandler sat down on his butt. It was a bit of a mess in that regard, but those things have happened in the UFC. Those things have happened in Strikeforce. Those things have happened all throughout the history of MMA, and you won't see it stop with the Chandler-Primus fight. Brent Primus winning the Bellator lightweight title via TKO injury to Michael Chandler. And I give Primus credit. He targeted that injury. Most fighters would kind of want to go out on their own merit And Brent Primus said, nope, I'm seeing the injury, and I'm going to take advantage of it. And to Michael Chandler's credit, he caught Brent Primus with a hard overhand right. It was such a hard overhand right that Chandler couldn't even stay balanced long enough to land another punch. It literally threw him off his feet, and that was the case that Chandler did not want to take that chance and be thrown off of his feet. He could not get back to his feet, and that was when the ref intervened. Co-main event, Matt Mitrione versus the last Emperor, Fedor Emelianenko. Wow. A almost double knockout where both fighters were hit at the same time, something that we rarely see in the sport of mixed martial arts. Matt Mitrione was not knocked out. Fedor Emelianenko was out cold, and Matt Mitrione was able to land some punches from the top position and finish Fedor off. I don't know if this is the end for Fedor. I feel very sorry for him that fight ended that way, but I would assume that it would be the end for him, but he did sign a multi-fight deal with Bellator MMA, so we might see more of Fedor Emelianenko. Then on to the main event, Chael Sonnen versus Wanderlei Silva. In true Chael Sonnen fashion, Chael dominated Wanderlei Silva from top position, maintaining heavy top position on Wanderlei. And in true Chael Sonnen fashion, there were two moments in the fight where Wanderlei landed a left hand and a right hand, and they both dropped Chael Sonnen, the first two times in Chael Sonnen's career that he had ever been dropped. So, all in all, it wasn't the hallmark event that everyone thought it would be. It wasn't the greatest event of all time, but in terms of Bellator's history, it was pretty damn good. It was very exciting. We saw a lot of unexpected things come to fruition in terms of Brent Primus becoming the lightweight champion, in terms of Ryan Bader becoming the light heavyweight champion, in terms of Douglas Lima and Lorenz Larkin kind of showing out a lackluster performance. That made the confidence of Rory McDonald only skyrocket, as Rory McDonald, who I believe is the biggest name inside the Bellator brand, will definitely be getting that next welterweight title shot, and I would definitely assume that he will become the next Bellator welterweight champion. On to what's next. Obviously with the main event, Chael getting his first victory in 4 years via total domination on the ground, really able to put forth his will on his opponent, really take Wanderlei down at will. It was just an amazing effort by both guys at that age to go out there, fight for 15 minutes. There were moments where it was kind of dull and they were kind of trying to posture for position and stuff like that, but that's mixed martial arts. This is not boxing. If you want to watch boxing, you can go watch boxing on Showtime or HBO. They'd love to have you. And that's not what this sport is. This sport is a complete fight game, not a one-dimensional fight game. These guys in MMA are not going into fights thinking that they will box. They say they are, but these MMA fighters have a lot more in their tool belt than just one art, and it really frustrates me when I have fans that say they just would have wished they would have saw a knockout. Well, guess what? If you want to see a knockout, watch boxing. There's barely any in boxing as well, so have a fun time trying to find one. In terms of what's next for Chael Sonnen, he alluded to the fact that he wants to take on the loser of the Mitrione-Fedor fight, the loser of the fight, not the winner. Matt Mitrione was the winner. He was able to land the punches that he needed to finish Fedor off from top position. I'm assuming Matt Mitrione will definitely be given a Bellator heavyweight title shot. I think the winner of Roy Nelson versus Chris Ayala will get the next crack at the heavyweight title. The winner of that fight will face Matt Mitrione for the Bellator MMA heavyweight title. And I would assume Roy Nelson would win it. So we could see Mitrione versus Roy Nelson for the Bellator heavyweight title. Now, Bellator is very young, and I know that they do not have the best roster. There are weight classes that they have that are not that deep. But I do know that they've come a hell of a long way in a calendar year, where last year they had Kimbo Slice versus Dead at 5,000. Now you have some respectable names inside the sport that have contributed to some of the biggest fights that the sport has ever had. Wanderlei Silva, Chael Sonnen, Rory McDonald, Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, guys that have really contributed to the sport of MMA, and Bellator can only get better. The pay-per-view numbers, I'm pretty sure, were somewhere between 200 and 300,000. That's pretty good. Usually that is a Demetrius Johnson pay-per-view for the UFC, which shows how low drawing power Demetrius Johnson has. And Bellator is new to the pay-per-view business. So if they could get 200 to 300,000, that is the same buy rate that UFC 199 had with Michael Bisping versus Dan Henderson. So it is what it is. You know, Bellator can only go up from here. I think that MMA free agency is only going to flourish from here on out. You're going to see more fighters leave the UFC to go to Bellator because they offer different packages in terms of sponsorships and things of that nature compared to the UFC. And the UFC has a real problem still of fighter pay, where Bellator does not have that problem. And fighters are recognizing that the UFC cares about the 1% over the 100%. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Chael Sonnen called out Fedor Emelianenko. He said he wants Fedor next. I don't know if that'll happen. Maybe. But Chael Sonnen also left an interesting tidbit about Rory McDonald, stating that he has some unfinished business with Rory, stuff that I didn't even know about, stuff that when Ariel Helwani was interviewing Chael Sonnen, he didn't even expect to hear things of that nature about Rory McDonald from the mouth of Chael Sonnen, the West Lynn mouth, as I like to call him. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do from here on out. Will Wanderlei Silva fight again? He signed a multi-fight deal. Will they do Wanderlei Silva versus Fedor, being that they both lost at Bellator NYC? Who knows? There are fights out there, though, there are fighters and fights out there that they can go after and get. And make happen. And Scott Coker is pretty good at making fights that fans want to see, as is Dana White in the UFC. So it's good to be an MMA fan. Bellator offers different things for a fan perspective like me, a hardcore fan. I grew up watching the UFC at a young age, grew up watching the WEC, grew up watching Strikeforce. And Bellator offers that Strikeforce type feel that the UFC just has not really mastered. It's a different type of feel in terms of MMA. They offer a Strikeforce feel and a bit of a pride feel. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for the company. It'll be very interesting to witness history as the years go by. We definitely have an organization in our midst that is not going anywhere. Viacom is a wealthy company. They're a company that is a multi-billion-dollar company, so they are looking to really put some money behind this, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens for the future of Bellator. But all in all, very decent event. I have no, quarrels with it. I've watched UFC events that were far worse than Bellator NYC, and I've watched some WEC events that were not that good. There were moments that the fights were a little bit dull, but what can you expect from two 40-year-old heavyweights and two 40-year-old light heavyweights? I mean, realistically, we knew that there'd be moments where the fights would kind of be slow. But I appreciate the fights, I appreciate the fighters, and I appreciate the sport of MMA. So thank you guys for tuning in. That was my take on Bellator MMA NYC. Successful event for Bellator. From what I'm hearing, they are on the verge of 300,000 pay-per-view buys. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. You figure 300,000 times 50, that's a good chunk of change. A good chunk of change for Bellator. And it can only go up. And really what they're trying to do is build their... that's $15 million. $15 million. That's not bad. In terms of what they're trying to do, for the future, they're going to continue to do pay-per-view, but it won't be every single month. They don't feel like they need to make it a mandatory idea to have pay-per-view every single month. And to be honest, they don't have the roster to do so. So as they build that roster, they'll bring in better fighters, and they will be able to put on some decent pay-per-view events. So I'm excited for the future of Bellator, and I thought Bellator NYC was a good time. Take care, everybody. That was the Thomas Take.